Hey, everybody. How's it going?
What's up, Taylor?
Good to be
It's
back.
Metal Rocket Whiskey time, and we're all together, and we're hanging out, and we're recording. Yay!
Yay. So exciting.
And it's no longer the three-person triangle of windows here.
That
We
is
have a fourth member tonight.
true.
I do see a fourth window here. Yes. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously, dead giveaway.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if you were
not watching
listening,
on YouTube, you don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
No, but we do have a very special guest this evening, a good friend of mine from the internet wrestling community. As far as I'm concerned, one of the best wrestling podcasts that is available now, called Through the Table.
Wow, high praise.
Yes. It's second best next to mine, of course.
Wait, say that. Hold on. Back up.
Yeah.
Okay. Wrestling podcast. Our guest. It's called Through the Table.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Like if someone gets thrown out of the ring and they fall through the table.
Could be. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you remember our very own Whiskey Obsessor Matt's show with Mrs. Whiskey Obsessor Jenny from Pretty Good for a Girl. They have their own wrestling podcast called Wrestling with Respect. Just to catch everybody up, because it's been a while.
Yes, been a long time. But I want to ask Chris, though, real quick, if you can just give us a brief synopsis of what your podcast, obviously it's about professional wrestling, but how did it get started? You know, how do you have such a huge footprint on social media, which you guys do, really? So go ahead.
So thanks again, Matt, for being a long time supporter of our podcast. And thank you again for the high praise.
Of course.
That really means a lot to me. And pretty much Through the Table got started between me and my high school best friend, Gerard, who our friendship pretty much entails professional wrestling. We never actually had a class together. We just knew each other because we sat at the same lunch table and we always talked wrestling. So we try to bring that vibe of people just getting together, shooting the shit, you know, not necessarily always being so analytical about the subject matter, but just having fun and having fun conversations. And, you know, it gets pretty crazy sometimes. And at some point we just decided, why don't we just put a microphone in front of us and hit the record button and have these conversations and also allow other people to be part of the conversation. So that's pretty much it. It's just two best friends bonding over the one thing that we probably love the most. Outside of metal and whiskey, of course, for me.
Yeah, I love it. That format seems to work really well. I know it really works well for me because, some of my favorite podcasts just kind of follow that same kind of outline. You just get a group of people together, you know, not necessarily scripted, but they might have a topic to talk about, and then they just kind of shoot the shit, and it ends up being a good show.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, we have fun doing it, and we just celebrated our 2-year birthday at the end of September, so going into our 3rd year, hopefully being a strong 3rd year for us.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
I was going through boxes. I just moved houses recently and came across the window decals you had made for us, Matt, and came across the decal and looked at it. Metal Rock and Whiskey established 2018. And I was like, really? Damn.
Doesn't it seem like so much longer ago than 2 years, though?
Oh,
considering everything that's happening.
Than 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, considering we actually started recording in 2017,
17,
technically.
yes.
But our first episode didn't air till January of 2018.
Yeah, because we're almost at the end of 2020, so that's going to be 3 years. So it's really 3.5 years.
Yeah, 3 years since we started. We kind of all put this together and started doing the practices and whatnot. So yeah,
we can only hope we can all get through 2020.
Yeah,
that's true.
That doesn't count for me though, because I don't remember those early recordings for multiple reasons.
It was like 3 months of recordings that we never that just went into the trash because it was trash.
Little podcast versions that, you know, talking music and whiskey at the time. Yeah,
You
Drinking.
are more clearly focused on the whiskey part of.
Yes, we were.
Yeah.
On the whiskey. Yeah.
We had to learn to fine tune that and kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Pace ourselves.
Here we are, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, so Ed.
Yes,
I think you have
ma'am.
something to say about our series.
All right. Well, we decided to take another break in our hair metal series here, but don't anyone worry, because it's for a good cause. We had the opportunity to have this very special guest join us, and we are very excited to have Chris on. And yes, we've already done his introduction. So, Matt, do you have anything you would like to add before we continue?
No, I think we should just get it right into what we're drinking. So we can get talking about some music and some other stuff. So as always, the show is called Metal Rock and Whiskey. Although whiskey is third in the title, it is not the least important, as we always discuss. And this is where we go around the horn, talk about what we have in our glass, talk about anything else whiskey related we want to talk about. So who wants to kick us off? I think we should have our guest kick us off, actually.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Good to me.
So I am sipping on some Basil Hayden's Kentucky bourbon in my fancy Norlin whiskey glass.
Yeah, it's a fancy glass there you got there.
I had to buy a proper glass just for this occasion because it's Metal Rock and whiskey, and although it might be third in the title, it's clearly number one in Matt's heart. So
yes,
here I am with my Basil Hayden's.
There you go.
Cheers to
that. Yeah. What about you, Ed?
Well, I was thinking about what I wanted to drink, looking through my cabinet, and decided to go with something I hadn't pulled out in a while. And it also harkens back to our Anthrax episode, if you all remember our Anthrax episode, where we had a barrel pick of this whiskey. I have
I know what it is.
The
awesome birthday present. Thanks, guys.
Single barrel, 120 proof, right here. And I'll tell you what, I remember liking it during that episode, and it's still a damn fine whiskey.
Get it out of that Glencairn glass, Ed. I'm going to kick your butt.
Well, it's a Metal Rock and Whiskey Glencairn.
I know, but you can't. It needs to go in a wider mouth glass.
I know,
because it's so high proof.
But
you'll enjoy it.
But yeah, it is very high proof, but it I don't know, it doesn't drink. I don't think like 120 to me anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's so damn delicious.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because I tend to like more on the sweeter side, but this tends to leans a little more on the savory side, which I do like too. But it's good to change things up every once in a while. So that's what I'm drinking tonight. I love the caramel and the almost like a tobacco notes it has in here, and yeah. Really loving it.
Do you know where my bottle is?
Color's insane. What's that? Where is
the bottle you guys got me for my birthday? It is still in Massachusetts this whole time. So I haven't tasted it in about 2 years now. Yeah. So
that's a good way to save it from yourself.
That is true. That is true. I miss it though. And thank God the person I left my bottles with, Kelly, doesn't drink whiskey, so they're safe.
So Chris, just so you know the backstory, and our listeners too, this was a bottle. It was a single barrel of Knob Creek 120 proof that was actually selected by the band Anthrax. And we were very fortunate to get our hands on a bottle, and me and then our then co-host Jake and Matt kind of got together and bought it for Sailor as a birthday present.
So nice. Such nice guys.
And then she forgot it.
Two gentlemen.
No, I didn't forget it. I wasn't going to drive across the country with my whole whiskey collection, and I didn't expect to stay out here. Here I am still, and all that whiskey is back there, but that's okay. That's all right.
Like you said, you know it's safe. That's
I
what
know
matters.
it's safe. I know it's safe. It's in
choose a non-drinker.
Exactly. What about you, Matt? What are you drinking?
Well, I'm going to break the little Jim Beam thread we got going on here between Basil Hayden's and Knob Creek. I'm drinking Pinhook, their full-proof bourbon, 57.25%. This I know our whiskey listeners will know what Pinhook, the brand, is. It's one of those, what I call sort of new buzz brands that's been going around a lot on social media. New Riff, I would put in that same category. Now the Smoke Wagon that I've seen everywhere too would be another one of those that I've seen everywhere. But this is my third bottle of Pinhook. I have their standard straight bourbon, and I have their rye. And, if a foolproof bourbon, I mean, I'm just in love with most of them that I have. There are very few that I've had that I don't like. Unfiltered, uncut, just amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
I have not tried it.
Caramel bomb. Definitely a caramel bomb.
Sounds good to me. What's the proof on that?
114.5.
Okay.
What's the price like on it?
It's not terrible. It's about $55.
Oh, that's not bad. Well,
no, not for foolproof.
Yeah, no, that's
is that a barrel strength you said, or?
Yeah, foolproof barrel strength. Yep.
Nice.
Yes. Good stuff.
Well, I'm going to fuck everything up because I'm not drinking an American whiskey. I'm drinking Scotch tonight. And I have just so I'm starting to taste my way through a lot of Speyside and beginning to pick up the smoky stuff and figure out what I like and what I don't like. And so I've heard a lot about Glenfarclas and obviously some of the special releases, but I just grabbed their 10-year as my first foray into it. And it's a Highland, and it is not what I expected at all. The 10-year is super light. It's like a dessert whiskey, I would say. I'm not a dessert person, but the nose, I smelled it. I'm like, oh, is this just going to be, very similar to all the rest of the Highlands? And I don't really need to put this on my shelf because I have others. But the minute I tasted it, it was something completely different. So it's like cupcakes in a bottle, vanilla cupcakes. So it's usually that fruit basket, that dried fruit. But this is just not overly sweet, really light. There's a simplicity of the complexity, if that makes sense. Nothing's competing with itself inside this juice. It's just really, really pleasurable, a really nice, light dram. This is a great, I would say, like a summer dram or an after dinner if you want, like a little dessert, something like that. I really, really enjoy it. So, and I've had the 12 and that's absolutely spectacular. So I'm going to go for work my way through their expressions.
So cool, because the one that you had last week, the Glenmoray, your description of that was very much the opposite. You were saying it was a kind of a brunch whiskey, a before dinner whiskey. And it just shows you the diversity of flavor profiles when you get into Scotch whiskey, which is why it's my number one love.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like with bourbon. I mean, you can't put 5 bourbons. I mean, you could, but I can put 5 bourbons together that are from the same place in Kentucky and they taste completely different. I can do the same thing with Tennessee whiskey. I can do the same thing with American ryes. Never, ever judge a category based on 1 or 2 expressions, I guess, is the moral of the story. This is, I mean, Ed, you would like this a lot. I would, and it's priced really well. I can't judge anything on Washington prices, so I would say grab a bottle of this. You would really, really enjoy this. It is so surprising.
All right. If I'm in the mood for some Scotch, I will definitely look for that one.
So that's what we're all drinking tonight. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you guys for having me.
Cheers, listeners. If you're not driving, I hope you're drinking. Or not operating heavy machinery or whatever else you do if you listen to a podcast. All right. Touché. So tonight we are going to discuss a band that I have been putting off discussing for a long time. I have a lot of issues with this band because of the category I believe it falls in. And then there's a few other things. So we're just going to get right into this. And Christian, I hope you're prepared for what we do here on Metal, Rock, and Whiskey.
I tried to catch up and do a little bit of homework and listen to a couple of past episodes to kind of prepare myself. And
those weren't even the rough ones.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited.
All right, here we go. Tonight we are going to be talking about Slipknot. Bum, bum, bum. So Slipknot is a new metal band. I will not call them a metal band, from Des Moines, Iowa. Actually, I want to tell you guys something. In case you hear me say Des Moines, there is a city in Washington, and it's spelled exactly the same way, but they pronounce it Des Moines. I have tried to not. I don't want to start pronouncing it like that because it's crazy to me, but just in case. Okay, so the band was founded in 1995 by percussionist Sean Crahan, drummer Joey Jordanson, and bassist Paul Gray. On December 4th of that year, them with some other dudes began playing in other that were in other metal and rock bands in the area. They made their live debut together. They played a benefit show in town, and they called themselves Meld. So much of the band's early development was attributed to late night planning sessions at a gas station where one of the guys worked nights. And as they were standing there shooting the shit one night and making plans, they decided changing the name to Slipknot after a song they were writing of the same name. So in December of that same year, 1995, Slipknot began recording material at SR Audio, a studio in the band's little hometown. They didn't have a recording contract, so they self-financed the project, which back then set them back about $40,000, which if you were making music back then, you know that is pretty much was the going rate. So their initial guitarist, Donnie Steele, left right away after they finished recording. During the mixing of the album, Craig Jones was recorded as Steele's replacement on guitar. But during the mixing, they were adding samples, and they realized that they couldn't produce this live. So Jones became the band's sampler, and Mick Thompson was brought in as a replacement guitarist. So after a self-professed complicated time with mixing and mastering, the band released their demo Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. Lovely. And they released it on Halloween of 1996. All right. So because they were self-financed, of course, it meant they had to distribute this record by themselves, this demo. And so their producer helped a little bit. It was finally handed over to a small distribution company called Ismist Recordings in 1997. So they received a little bit of airplay on local radio stations off of the back of the demo, but no real interest from record labels. Of course, they're not really a radio-friendly band. So the band returned to the studio to develop new material. So it's at this time that they sought more melodic vocals for their music, and in comes Corey Taylor, who's probably the most well-known member of this band. He was recruited from another local band, and this moved Cole Safini into backing vocals and percussion. So more lineup changes. La 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 la. That's going to be a theme with this band. In early 1998, they produced a second demo, and it featured 5 tracks, and it was exclusively for record labels. And they began receiving a lot of attention. In February of 1998, producer Ross Robinson, who produced bands like Korn, Deftones, Glassjaw, Machine Head, Sepultura. He was definitely the new metal producer of that late 90s, early 2000s. He offered to produce their demo album after attending some rehearsals in Des Moines on one of the label's requests. So at this point, they have 9 members in the band, because why not? Then in late June of 98, they received a $500,000 7-album deal from Roadrunner Records. Probably the best label for them to go with during this period.
Is that $500,000 per album, or is that $500,000 in total for 7 albums?
It would be for 7 albums. They're nobody yet.
Okay. All right.
You can always add money to that, but that's where it starts out.
I guess based on performance, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I can't even begin to follow the lineup changes here with this fucking band. There have been 15 band members, and the band has only released 6 albums.
That's not the worst we've seen, though.
No, but get the fuck out of here. All right. So anyway, they're signed now. They've got a record deal. They were put on their first tour, which was Ozfest in 1999. I can't imagine a better way to launch a band in 1999 than putting them on the Ozfest stage. So their self-titled first album was then released on June 29th while they're on the Ozfest tour. absolutely brilliant. So they toured several countries throughout 99 and 2000 in support of the album. And in early 2000, Slipknot, the album, was certified platinum, a first for any album released by Roadrunner Records. I have a funny story later about that because I kind of benefited from this all happening. We'll get into that. So anticipation for their second album was really crazy. It's early 2001. And so at that time, some of the bands that I mentioned previously are just killing it all over MTV, all over the radio. This is the time for this kind of sound. So they began recording their second album at Sound City in LA. Recording their second album ended in February of 2001, and the band embarked on their next tour, which was the Iowa World Tour. So Iowa's second Slipknot album was released 2001. It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard charts and number 1 in the UK. Mind you, I'm living in Europe at the time, so I remember how ridiculously popular these fuckers were. So this album produced 3 singles, and 1 appeared on the soundtrack for the film Resident Evil. In 2002, Slipknot appered in the Rollerball movie performing I Am Hated. Yeah.
Rollerball. Wow.
Which is a remake.
Yes, it's a remake. Yep. Exactly. So after that, they every single show on their next tour was completely sold out all around the world. And we're talking major arena venues. So then this is all happening. Lots of success, right? Fruits of your hard labors. Slipknot goes on hiatus because of internal conflict. I mean, you've been a band for 5 fucking minutes. Grow up. But anyway, after several delays, Slipknot had moved into the Mansion in LA. If you guys are not familiar with the Mansion, Mansion, it's Rick Rubin's famed recording studio mansion, where you sleep there and you record there. For example, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Marilyn Manson, Audio Slave, Linkin Park, Jay-Z, they've all recorded there. So this is mid-2003, and they're supposed to be working on their third album along with Rick Rubin as producer. Fucking bizarre choice. But anyway, apparently they ended up getting their shit together in early 2004. The work on the album had begun, and that gives us Subliminal Verses. They went on a world tour. They released the album while on tour, and it peaked at number 2 on the Billboard album charts. So touring continues through 2004 up to the end of 2005 before the band goes on hiatus for the second time. The fuck? So then preparation for Slipknot's fourth album begins towards the end of 2007. Okay, let me just go back for a minute. Touring continued through 2004 up to the end of 2005. Then they don't begin preparing for their next album until 2007. Like, you're a fucking new band crushing it. Whatever. So they this time decide to work at Sound Farm Studio in Jamaica, Iowa, in their own backyard. And this time they work with producer David Fortman. He's producer of Evanescence, Superjoint, Mudvayne, Godsmack, Ugly Kid Joe. So the album is finished, and in August of 2008, they release it. And they go on another world tour. All Hope Is Gone, it was called. So now this album debuts at number 1 on the Billboard albums chart. So they tour through 2008 and continue until Halloween 2009. And then they go on a third hiatus. So now I'm fucking done with these dummies. So for sake of discussion, we're going to talk about the 3 albums that were mentioned because I can't fucking deal with it anymore. I just want to give you guys some little pieces about these albums. Okay, so let's start with Slipknot, their first album. Okay, after the album's release, the band had to remove 2 tracks. Otherwise, they would have had to take the whole album off the market after allegations of copyright infringement. The song Purity and Frail Limb Nursery were inspired by a story published online about a girl named Purity Knight who was kidnapped and buried alive. The website, called Crime Scene, presents fictional stories as real-life crime cases. Originally, the website included no disclaimer saying it was a work of fiction. Many readers believed the story to be true, including Corey Taylor. And I quote, "I still think the story is real. It fucked our whole world up when we read it. Can you imagine a girl being buried in a box and have all this lecherous bullshit drip down on her from this guy? It just hurts your head," end quote. The case was complicated by audio samples that they used from the website.
Of course.
So they took the songs off, re-released the album, everything's fine. Wait and Bleed off of that album, by the way, was nominated for Best Metal Performance at the 2001 Grammy Awards. It lost to Deftones Elite, as it should have done. All right, let's discuss this album before we move on to the next one. Let's discuss their first release, Slipknot. Who wants to go first? Or we can all go together. I need a drink.
Well, I listened to it for the first time today. I can tell you that.
Oh, fresh perspective.
Yeah,
Fresh
there you go.
ears.
That's always good to have. Right?
Fresh ears are good.
Yeah.
What do you think?
My impression of the band, well, as I didn't really know a lot, wasn't too familiar with their music. You know, I kind of knew the genre they were, new metal, and I think I've heard maybe bits of their music here and there, but never really sat down and said, okay, I'm going to listen to Slipknot. This is the first time ever. So I can appreciate the musicianship that they bring to the table, but again, this just falls into one kind of thing that really kind of turns me off is the vocals. All right. Now I'm very picky about vocals in bands that I listen to. There have been a lot of bands out there which I would probably like a lot better if it wasn't for the Lamb of God is one of those bands. Perfect example. This would fall right in there with Lamb of God. I dig the riffs. The drumming is amazing. It does get a little repetitive. But the vocals, I think, just, is just not my style, but I can see why this would appeal to a lot of people, though, as, they have had a lot of success. That's my quick take on it.
Anyone else?
So I'll go, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess as the one fan in the group tonight.
Don't get ahead of yourself. Just wait.
It's good to know that we're tag teaming on here.
Maybe.
Hopefully. First of all, I appreciate the history lesson because I learned a few new things, and I do know that they do have like a very, very complicated history.
Mm-hmm.
That band, but going to their first album, the self-titled, it's one of the records that I bought on vinyl because I started collecting vinyl records. And for those that are like really into their music, I think their first 4 tracks are like, they're like putting a cleanup hitter. For those that understand baseball, they're like putting a cleanup hitter as your 1, 2, 3, and 4 hitter. Like to start off, it's right out of the gate, just like 100 miles an hour going full power, just on those first 4 tracks alone. And some of those, like Sick and Eyeless, are probably like 2 of my favorite Slipknot tracks ever. So when I do get into my moods of having a Slipknot listening session, this is the album that I probably go back to the most. So I'm a big fan of their self-titled debut.
I mean, the critical reception it received was phenomenal. They had a Grammy nomination. They won Best Single Award at the 2000 Kerrang Awards. I mean, the way it tracked on the charts. I mean, the critics loved this album, and obviously so did young fans at the time.
My turn.
Oh, it's Matt's turn.
Okay. I'll start off by painting a bigger picture of rock music. I'll use the broad definition rock at that time, 1999. what I consider a very barren hellscape for hard rock music. I think Sailor would agree with me on that one. You had named a number of bands that were kind of peaking at that time or starting to find their foothold. But if you look at the kind of music out there that was dominating the charts in general, or that was all over MTV, yeah, this stuff got some MTV play, Korn, all that stuff. But you're talking, this is like late 90s fucking boy band shit, and Britney Spears is everywhere. Stuff is getting softer and softer and softer and softer. And I think that some of those really super duper hardcore hard rock and metal fans were looking for something super aggressive, super just angry and different to sink their teeth into. Korn gives you a tease, I think, with that, but
they don't fully admit it sometimes.
They don't satiate the hunger for it. I think lending to this album's popularity is, I'll call it a gimmick, I guess. Lending to wrestling and stuff like that. Their look, their sound, the aggression that they bring in all of their performances, and in this album, as you said, the first 4 tracks, but really track 1 through 15. I guess I think it satiated sort of a primal need for something at that time. So I understand the popularity of it. Me personally, there are a couple of songs on this album that I fucking love. I'm just going to say it right now. So Wait and Bleed, I do like that. I do love that song. And Surfacing is another song that I used to listen to before a fucking hockey game. Like when I'm playing hockey and I listen to that song, I'm fucking ready to go 1,000 miles an hour out of the gate.
That'll make you want to put one into the boards real quick.
Exactly. That makes me want to kill. That song makes me want to kill somebody. Outside of those 2 songs, I can go back to something that Ed said and say that it does get very repetitive. I think they would have done more of a service to themselves to make it a shorter album. Maybe I think 15 tracks might be a little bit too much, but I think the album served a need at the time. And those 2 songs, I will say, I have absolutely no problem with those 2 songs at all.
I like your point about there being a pent-up demand for harder music at that time. That's a very good point, Matt. Yeah, there was not too many bands who would get into that super hard, fast kind of like thrash metal was completely out of the picture.
Because I mean, you have Metallica.
For all practical purposes, anyway. I'm sure there are a lot of underground bands, but
Metallica had changed, and
So let me give you guys a perspective from inside the industry, because it just so happens I was in the music industry during all of this. So there's only 2 times in my life that I've left the spirits industry and told to get a big girl job and all of that baloney, and this is one of the times, and this is the. I ended up going.
That's where you ended up.
Was by accident. But what was happening at the time, hardcore was turning into another type of metal, right? That's what's happening in the underground. That's what's happening in live shows that kids have access to. That's what bands are coming up and playing if they like anything hard. So I totally agree with you, Matt, that that's what people were looking for, because hardcore had started to walk away from metal completely as well, which was really weird. It took this weird spin, and then there was this split that happened where you had the beat down hardcore, we called it, and then the hardcore metal, right? And new metal were the bands that were like the Slipknot is a perfect example. Korn is a perfect example. Linkin Park. But those are all very polished. They're very radio friendly. There's something different altogether. But what was happening that was so raw, like some of the best underground shows or independent shows, small shows that I've ever seen in my life were during this period of time. There's this band Converge that came out of Boston, unbelievable. Some of the just some of the best underground, I would say, other than the mid 80s, it's probably some of the best indie music ever at that time. So it makes sense that the bands that make it big are going to be a lighter version of that, right?
Yeah.
So when this band comes out, in my experience, their fans, they were very young teenagers. That's who was attracted to this band and Korn and Linkin Park. I mean, we're talking, 10 to 14-year-olds, 10 to 15-year-olds. That's right when you're starting to build your own music tastes and have, you're listening to music on your own and starting to understand what you like and what you don't like, and you're starting to recognize musical artists and things like that, the normal period of time. I didn't really experience a whole lot of people older than that. When their first album came out, being attracted to the band, that changes, of course. But the obsession with this band was unfucking believable. I don't get it because I just wasn't of that age. I was either 30 or turning late 20s. It just, I did not understand why people were so obsessed with this band. And let me tell you, they were obsessed because I saw them live. And it was one of the craziest fucking things I've ever seen. Yeah. So I happened to be in Belgium at the time. It's where I had my record label and my touring company. And Belgium has some of the most notorious summer outdoor concerts that are just fucking nuts. Like Pukkelpop is one of them. I've talked about this before. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people. No fucking shit. You've seen these footage from these things, I'm sure, and like the aerial views and stuff. It's bonkers. So I was there at one of the, I don't remember what album. It was probably later. Maybe it was their second album. And so the kids who would do my table at shows, they would like sell the merch, back when you had CDs and physical merch to sell at shows. They were just like, oh, please, can we go over to the stage when Slipknot plays? Oh, I want to see them so bad. And I was like, all right, fine. I'll take you guys over there. So they are in the shit and I am standing to the side of the stage and I'm watching these fucking psychos play and I'm much more interested in the crowd. They look like fucking psychos when they're on stage. I'm so mesmerized by what's happening in the audience. And I turn around and look and there's like other people from the bands that are playing the shows or, industry people. We're all standing there kind of waiting, whatever. And we're all I think our jaws were on the floor, like watching how the crowd was responding in specific to Corey Taylor. So at one point, the pits were bonkers because these kids don't know that there's like etiquette in the pits yet, right?
They're going out the window.
Yeah. When you're young, you don't know yet that there's like kind of an etiquette to that.
You learn the hard way.
Yeah, you learn the hard way.
Yeah,
you get an elbow in the fucking face and someone pulls you out. So at one point in between songs, he tells everybody, he stops a song, Corey, and says, all right, everybody, shh, I want you to be quiet. Maybe there were 40,000 people. I don't know. It was fucking insane how many people were there. And he says, I want you all to get down. Get down.
Yeah.
And he waits. There's footage of this out there somewhere. They get down. Nobody was like, nah, fuck you, man. Like always. Nobody does that to this guy, and I'm waiting for it. I'm like, I want to see how many people actually get down. They all get down on the grass. And he's like, when I say whatever, I want you all to get the fuck up. And whatever it was. And he's like, but you wait until I tell you. And I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. And they do it. And when he says whatever he says, it was
Seller's the only one standing.
Explosion. We were all just like, we've got our arms crossed and we're just like looking at each other like, is this fucking happening? Like, talk about some power right now from this fucking band that we're all like, whatever with these guys. It just shows you the relationship between them and their fans and their listeners. It was the craziest thing. He had absolute control over these kids. And I think it had a lot to do with, and we'll talk about that next, who they are on stage. They have, if you don't know Slipknot, for some reason, if you've been living under a fucking bridge, just do the Googles and look at the images. I just want you to look at images of them. So they always wear masks, right? They were, well, early on, they were masked up. As a matter of fact, you would never see them without their masks on early on. They wouldn't do interviews unmasked or anything. Fucking smart. Totally brilliant. Kind of like Kiss with the makeup. I hate to use them as an example. They are a performance band. And so I really wonder, I have to say, if they didn't have the masks and the performance, would they have done so well on the charts? Because I don't think their music alone would have done what they ended up doing. I think the personas they created, the imagery, the theatrics of it had a huge part of their success, in my opinion.
I think so too. I would agree with that. Even as a fan, I think that played a very important part especially in their early success, because like Matt was kind of suggesting before, is like they kind of came in a place where that kind of music was starting to get lost or get watered down, and they could have easily very just been just another band that in a already oversaturated genre that just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I think they were pretty smart to be like, okay, hey, we need to come up with something else that kind of really sets us apart. And I mean, I think there's fun in that too, because I guess like the fan base kind of like wants to maybe create their own folklore behind them, and they kind of become these characters outside of who they actually are as people. Absolutely. I think there's a bit of fun in that. I think there's a part of that is that crowd participation, if you will, because you'll see at shows like people with their homemade masks, and it's just like especially that their masks evolved throughout all their albums, and they have like a different mask for every cycle. Except for Mick, he got lazy over the last. He was like, I'm not changing it for nobody. It's one of my favorites.
It's similar to Guar, when people would dress up to go to Guar shows, and there have been few bands that have been able to create that, where you want to dress up and you go dressed up as something or whatever. I just want to read you guys real quick. Just this was the perfect synopsis, perfect answer I could find from all my research on the masks. So this is from a website called laddersound.com. Slipknot masks have become a fundamental part of their identity since the band formed in 1995. It was, of course, Slipknot's linchpin clown who came up with the idea of their masks. It was shortly before the band's first ever gig on Halloween in 1995, and the band was rehearsing. We're all going around the room and asking, what are you going to wear? Remembered clown. And he said, I pulled up the clown mask I had and said, I'm wearing this. He claims it didn't go down well with his bandmates. A few of them were like, no fucking way. You can't be the only guy wearing some stupid mask. And he said, so I said, I don't really care what you think. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. So here we are all these years later. Iconic, terrifying, and sometimes quite funny, the Slipknot masks have become such a part of their early legend that the photographer Paul Harries, who shot the band countless times in the early days, recalls being stopped by fans outside of shows and asked if he'd seen Slipknot without their masks. He would be asked, do they really have faces underneath? And with that, the legend was born. Whether that story is true or not, how it happened, doesn't matter. But man, that played for me a huge part, I think, in their success.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, even now, you look at now that they replaced one of the percussionists. Everyone wants to. It's like the big internet mystery is who is Tortilla Man.
Yeah,
and everyone wants to figure out like who the new member is, and they did it on the last album cycle when unfortunately, as fans know, Paul Gray passed away, so they got a new bassist, and then Joey Jordison left the band, so they had a new drummer. So that it's part of this game, and I think it's just.
You could have almost not tell people that they left the band. You could
you could just be stand-ins, and it's like, here, just pretend that you're that guy that and I think I think that just again adds to like the whole folklore behind them, is that now people, when they get a new member and there's a lineup change, that's like the thing. It's like, how quickly can we crack the code? Like, who is this?
Yeah, who is it?
underneath the new mask. And just, I want to touch very quickly, just because from personal experience, I saw them live last summer at a big like outdoor arena. So that moment you were talking about, they still do that. That's like their thing. Towards the end of the show, it's Spit It Out mixed with Jump the Fuck Up, which Corey did with I want to say Soulfly. I think that's a Soulfly song. But he mixes it up and he tells everyone to get down. Mm-hmm. And it's the craziest, most bizarre thing I've ever been a part of in a live, because everybody listens. Like, it's just like this very hypnotic, like everybody gets down and they wait and wait and wait until the big pop, and then everybody has fun. So
in that moment, you understand how cults happen.
Yeah, you do.
The first time, if you don't, I mean, when I experienced this, it was one of the first times they did this, and if you don't know what's going on, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you. It's pretty incredible. Let's move.
Well, no.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was so happy you mentioned Kiss, though, because as I mentioned, or we talked about last week on our overrated show, one of the reasons why they were on the overrated list was because of the gimmick. You couldn't get past the gimmick to get to the music. Mm-hmm. I think that there's the gimmick there with Slipknot, but I do think that there are more talented musicians. And I don't hate Corey Taylor as much as I hate Gene Simmons. So
it wouldn't be possible.
It wouldn't be possible. It would be absolutely impossible. But yeah, just touch on that point that you said.
I wanted to move on to talking about Iowa, the album, a little bit before we go down the road too far. So this was later on in their career was described as one of the darkest times for them. And so I want to give you some quotes. So Sean Crahan said, "Recording Iowa was fucking hell. I wanted to kill myself. There was drugs, bitches, rock and roll, and all that shit. People expected so much of us then. People equals shit was our way of saying fuck off and leave us alone. There was nothing happy about Iowa," confirmed Taylor as well. "All of a sudden, we were these metal stars, and we weren't really planning for it. We'd all got caught up in the lifestyle and the problems that come with that." We're going to discuss this in a minute. Let me continue. The first single, Left Behind, was nominated for 2002 Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance at the 44th Awards. The second single, My Plague, was nominated in 2003 for the same award. Corey Taylor later revealed in an interview he put himself in specific, I gotta get through this one without laughing, in specific situations to achieve his performance on the album. While recording vocals for the final song, Iowa, he was completely naked, vomiting all over himself, and cutting himself with broken glass. "That's where the best stuff comes from, man. You've got to break yourself down before you can build something great."
Sounds like John and Yoko shit going on there, man. Like recording naked and
never meet the guys. That is the stupidest fucking thing. Anyway, okay.
So did Annie Lennox really walk on broken glass? Now I'm wondering.
Yeah, you mean you have to. It's where the best stuff comes from, Matt. You've got to break yourself down before you can build something great. You want to puke on yourself, and then something great's going to happen.
Hey.
Also, while producing this album, Ross Robinson was injured in a dirt bike accident. He suffered a fracture in his back, but returned to the studio a day after being hospitalized, reportedly putting all of his pain into the album, and much to the admiration of the band. They're all fucking idiots, okay? Number one, you're all fucking stupid idiots, okay?
Sounds like Johnny Knoxville would be a great member of the band.
Yeah, he really would have. So I want to go back to them saying that all of a sudden we were these metal stars and we weren't really planning for it. Fuck off. You wanted to get fucking signed by a major label. You're doing world tours. You're recording your second album. You're getting paid to play music. Okay. Number one, quit your fucking whining. Quit your whining. That's your problem. How about not being able to feed your family, having access to fucking healthcare, having access to education, and it's the worst and darkest time of your life because you're now famous and have money? Shut the fuck up. That's the shit that will make me want to just mow these motherfuckers down and never ever listen to a song.
Was that Taylor that said that? Is that his quote?
No, that's crazy. So it's both Taylor and Crahan,
right.
both of them. I mean, get Jesus, get out of here, man. That is just, I'm sorry. It's not like this was an accidental thing that happened to you. Like someone took a picture of you on social media and, you can't leave your house now, right? But you're not making any money from it and it's embarrassing and it's ruining your life. You wanted to get fucking signed as a band. You did not have to sign the recording contract. You didn't have to do it. So don't give me this shit. We weren't really planning for being metal stars. All right, fine. Whatever.
No.
And then the whole naked and vomiting and cutting yourself, because that's where the best stuff comes from. Oh my God. I don't even know how to respond to that one.
That sounds like some really good copy pasta right there. That's just something you throw in a Facebook thing.
Seriously. That is just, to me, that sounds
where the
like
best stuff comes from.
A very immature, mentally unwell, desperate for attention little boy. That's what that sounds like to me.
Oh, they're definitely mentally unwell, especially Corey.
I mean, he's trying to sound profound and, enlightened, and he just sounds like a fucking idiot. I hope he needs therapy. I hope he gets the therapy he needs.
Well, I mean, if you know anything about his upbringing and what he went through and, ODing on coke at 15, he had a really rough fucking upbringing, all obviously, self-induced, but, I mean,
even if it's not self-induced,
but I'm saying you're already dealing with an unstable person here. So,
sure.
It surprises me, but it really doesn't surprise me at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Iowa, the album.
Big difference.
Yes, big difference.
Iowa.
You sound like a tourist. That's Iowa.
So that's Iowa.
I mean, I've been there, Matt. or Ed. I know you've been there.
Broken glass everywhere.
Through it.
People puking all over themselves. It's a mess.
Yeah. Everybody's puking all over themselves in Iowa. There's not a whole lot to see in Iowa, I have to say. It's very children of the corn. Their city, Des Moines, is very confusing because there's 2 Des Moines. It's a whole shit show. It's very cold as well. It's cold and boring.
As it is in the northern Midwest.
Sorry, Iowa. Don't ever hire me for tourism.
And there go our numbers in Iowa. Boom.
So if you want to read more about these idiots, Corey Taylor, he released a book. I think in 2011 it was 7 Deadly Sins, settling the argument between Born Bad and Damaged Good. Oh, for fuck's sake. I mean, that just does not help.
I think you should do a live reading as one of the episodes. I think
of the book.
Oh my God. As read by Sailor Guevara.
Been doing a sonnet every day, and in his beautiful voice and his beautiful cadence. Yeah, I could do I'll read a chapter
of different chapter
Rockstar's books each week with my own little excerpts. You could probably get somewhere with that.
You should have known something was wrong when they brought in Rick Rubin for their 3rd album. When they're on top of the world and they bring in Rick Rubin. Usually when you're at your,
you want to go
when something's going on and then you bring in Rick Rubin to save your career. Yeah, exactly.
Let's do that. Let's move on to that, because I really want to talk about the producer. I mean, we have talked about producers often, but I think this band warrants us really going down the producer rabbit hole. So, Subliminal Verses album. So here's what the band said about working with Rick Rubin. Band members were very divided and still remain divided over their experience with working with him. Some doubted his commitment to Slipknot as he split his time between too many artists at once. In 2008, Corey Taylor said he met Rubin only 4 times during the entire recording of the album. He said he barely showed up to the studio. and quote, we were being charged horrendous amounts of money. And for me, if you're going to produce something, you're fucking there. I don't care who you are. He added, he's overrated, he's overpaid, and I'll never work with him again. All right. But
that's his thing, though.
That's Jim Root, guitarist at the time, said in the same interview, quote, a lot of guys in the band say Rick was unavailable, and yeah, he takes on a lot of projects at what time, but he also does things that are beneficial. He would listen to what we've done, then he'd have us retrack things that needed work. He's kind of like a big brother up on the hill. Even though he wasn't there physically every day, he was still there, and that's my favorite record that we've done. Yeah. Why in the fuck would you? I have no idea whose decision that was. I don't think Rick Rubin he didn't need to touch this band. They had no business I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand why they didn't stay with their first producer, who literally created that sound that made this band so famous and so popular. I don't get it. I don't understand. And Rick Rubin of all people, why? When you've got a good thing going, what were they doing? It wasn't like their albums were tanking and they needed to, like you said, save them. They're on a high. Each album is charting better than the last. Why the fuck would you change that? Especially when you know Rick Rubin has so much influence over the music. He really does. And that's dangerous.
That's his thing. He's not an omnipresent producer. He will come in every once in a while, but he will mostly let the band do to their own devices usually.
Yes and no, though. Yeah. I feel like you can hear. I feel like he with this band affected their sound. That's what I mean.
It was a Rick Rubin album and not a Slipknot album.
Yeah.
See, perfect. Thank you.
He did the same thing.
His fingerprints are all over Volume 3.
Agreed.
It's like, that this is something that Rick Rubin did.
He did the same thing to Linkin Park when Linkin Park had the first 2 albums, which were mega hits.
Yep.
And then they brought him in for album number 3, and it completely ruined the band.
Yeah.
Changed them. Yeah. I mean, when you're trying to reinvent the wheel, or you're trying to grasp at something that's not there, bad idea. And I think that's what happened here.
Agreed. Yeah. I don't know why they moved away from Ross Robinson. I think that, maybe they had to for scheduling conflicts with the second album. That's often the case. I would have gone right back to him. I mean, he created their sound. He defined them. He helped them, figure out who they were. And so when you're on a high and things are only getting better, bring that guy back, because they would have gelled so well together. I think he would have made a completely different album that would have done. That album it's not like the album didn't do well. It's just was the beginning of the end, in my opinion. So I think the album would have done even better if they had gone back to Ross.
Do you think that they might have been worried about going to the well one too many times and making an album that was just too much of the same of what we already got, and maybe that's why?
I don't think so. I think this was all label. I think this is unfortunately what happens often with young musicians. They are still very new to the business. They're still very, they're only a couple years in. They're still very green. I think they were not able. So here's what happens. If this can go one of two ways. If you don't show up to your label fully formed, here are our songs. This is our sound. This is our identity. This is who we are. If you like it and you believe in it, you can sign us. If not, we're going to move along. So you can come unformed. And if you have a really good label, if you have a really good representation, they're going to put you together with a producer that's going to help you form what you believe is your sound and your identity. But that can go a different way as well. You can just be led into different situations. And because you're not fully formed, because you don't either believe in your identity or you're not really locked into it and can't really produce that on your own, you're going to have this happen to you. And I think that's the problem. And that's one of my criticisms about the band, is I just don't think that they were, especially when you're changing musicians all the time, changing lineup constantly, were they really dedicated to writing on the road and, you know, demoing tracks on the road and being a cohesive entity. Were they writing together? Were they able to continue writing together when they would lose other members? And then having these hiatuses. I mean, when you have a hiatus after every tour and in between every album, that's a problem as well. So I would have gone right back to the well, knowing how many problems they were having internally after the second album, right? There's so much drug abuse going on. They're a fucking mess, but they're a cash cow. I think that's when you go back to the well.
Yeah. And I think that on the flip side of this, when you look at a band like Slayer, when they brought Ruben in for Rain and Blood, I think that they timing is everything with this stuff, and I think that they read the landscape of what was going on, and they brought him in, and we got one of the best pieces of metal that we've ever seen, ever. Yes, I mean Ed would disagree, but that's fine.
but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's because Slayer already knew who they were. They
knew who they were.
They
had an idea. Yes.
Yeah. They were already Slayer, and that's Rick Rubin's magic, is that he can touch bands sometimes. I feel like they need to know who they are, though. They need to be self-disciplined. They need to have that talent within themselves, and he can do some little zhuzhing, and boom, it's magic. This is not the case. When
you have a band who knows who they are, but they haven't gotten the most juice out of them that they could,
right?
You bring him in, and he says he's gonna get the most juice out of that orange.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what he did with Slayer in '86.
Yes.
So, yeah. When you bring him in when it's not broken, different story.
I can't help but think there might have been some friction between them and their original producer Ross at the time. Otherwise, what's the point? And then, if they had to come up with someone at the last minute, who can we have that'll take us to the next level? Rick Rubin.
I don't think it was Rick Rubin's never a last minute decision. I mean, he's very difficult to get to work with anyway. I think that they were moving on after the first album, which makes sense. But from everything that I've read, they didn't have any problem with Ross. They worked really well together.
Okay.
I think that this is just, to me, this is inexperience. Just a lot of inexperience, and I think the label, they made big mistakes. Big mistakes. And then, you've got the band doing fucking hiatuses all the time, breaking up, saying, we're done, we're broken up, we're going away, we're not going to fucking talk to anybody for a year. I mean, can you imagine how frustrating that would be for your artist representation, for your label, for your, you run the risk of the band really breaking up and not coming back after every fucking album. I mean, I'm sure they made all their money back on the first album, but still, they were signed to a 7-record deal that they actually never finished.
I always say that when you come out of the gate so hot, and we've seen this before, we've seen it, whether we're going all the way back to Van Halen, when we did the Van Halen episodes, when they came out of the gate hot, whatever debut album you talk about, Appetite for Destruction, you come out of the gate hot, the clock starts. And it's just a matter of time before everything just implodes. It's really true, because you have a hot start, you're riding that adrenaline, but then you don't know how to handle it after a certain time. Album 2, album 3, everything starts to unravel. We've seen it so many times, and I don't think there's an actual antidote, for something like that when you have such a hot debut like that. Just my 2 cents.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, you hit a certain level, and some bands are lucky enough to really make a lasting impression in the music industry. But it's those are big shoes to fill for yourself to stay there your entire career. You're starting your career, which is at that level, which is great, but you've got to stay there for the next 15, 20 years, if possible.
Yep, and that's a minority of the bands that actually do it.
Yeah.
It's not that many bands that have been able to do it. No.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. Well, I think, overall, Slipknot has never been a band that I cared for musically. I mean, if I had the opportunity back in the day to see them live, they were entertaining. I wouldn't pay for it. They were definitely entertaining, but it was never music that I liked. I wasn't into that whole genre of music then either. I think, like I said, I was a little too old at that point and had, there was a type of metal, there was a type of sound that I wanted to hear other than what was coming out in the late 90s and early 2000s to mid 2000s. So it just didn't do it for me. And Ed, you made quite a statement earlier today. I'd like you to repeat that for the listeners.
Oh, yeah, this was off in our DMs to each other earlier. I was talking about listening to Slipknot, and I made a comparison, and only our more diehard listeners will get this. But I remember we did our Slayer episode, and I had never listened to Slayer before that episode. And I kind of gave a similar reaction to Slayer as I did to Slipknot. Maybe a little harsher at the time. I don't really remember, but
wait, your Slayer reaction was way harsher.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it was. But anyway, I guess my podcast cohorts thought it was so hilarious. I think it was a sailor made the edometer, which is like a meter from
Ed, we just lost your sound. Is it just me?
No, I can't hear him either.
Okay. Can't hear him either.
Okay. It's you, Ed. It's not. I thought it was me. You're muted. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
How did I get muted? Anyway, as I was saying, they made this edometer, and Slayer was all the way on the bad end. So I'm thinking, my first thought was, okay, I would listen to these guys. I would listen to Slayer before I would listen to these guys again, I think. So we may have to recalibrate the edometer.
So I'm going to make a new edometer. And we're going to replace, I'm going to do like a cross out of Slayer, and we're going to put Slipknot there.
But honestly, it kills me to say that about some of these bands, because there are elements of their music I do like, but the whole package I just can't deal with. So
it was an interesting time in music. I will say that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Like, a lot of the bands that came out that were very popular and dominating the airwaves, like Korn, I will never understand how I just can't do it. I can't even listen to their sound. They're fucking horrific. Linkin Park, I God forbid a song comes on near me, I can't get it out of my head. Not because I don't like it, but I can't stand the whining, the repetitive whine. God, I would do anything to get the song out of my head. I had to listen to yodeling once. I read that somewhere, that if you've got a song stuck in your head and you can't get it out, just Google yodeling albums.
And it'll knock it right out
automatically.
So yeah.
All right.
Well, so we have one fan. We have one absolutely fucking not fan. Matt, where are you at? Are you like in the middle, or would you call yourself a fan?
I understand their importance at the time they started. I understand all of that. I've seen them live, as you have, Sailor, as you have, Chris. Very early, like Sailor, I saw them live. Great show, great performers. Outside of that first album, which grabbed me to a certain extent, it was all of the other extenuating stuff that kind of turned me off to them, because I pay attention to everything. It's not just the music for me, or the talent. I do, dabble in all that other stuff, whether it's the in-band fighting or just listening to interviews of guys, which brings me to, you know, Corey Taylor, who, you know, I feel bad for the guy on one end because he had a terrible upbringing, made some poor choices, maybe not totally his fault, but in a lot of ways, he reminds me of Axl Rose in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not talent-wise, because no, because Axl is Axl. But in sort of a terrible upbringing, yes, same as Axl. We've covered that. But sort of just that my shit don't stink sort of thing that I just fucking hate, you know,
explaining away your bad behavior, you know, like first of all, we should acknowledge that Corey Taylor is an addict and that is, I believe, the disease.
That's the part of me.
You're predisposed to it. It's a fucking disease and it's terrible. And I would never, ever, I never want to admonish someone that is an addict, but there's addict behavior that you can't do, you know, that you have a hard time controlling. There's, you know, all of these impulses that you really cannot control until, you know, you hit a point where you want help and get help. For me, it's when you have access to everything to get you that help, when you have access to, because you have, you're cared for in certain ways, medically, financially. I think then I have a very hard time. I have a very hard time feeling sorry for people that go even 10, 15, 20 years later, they're still making excuses for their behavior.
Yeah. And he has a certain, go ahead.
As opposed to saying, you know, I was young, I was dumb, I'm an addict. That was addict behavior. You know, I've been trying to get back on the wagon. I try to get help, even if it's not successful now. That's okay. Keep trying. Every day you just get up and try again, right? But to still explain away that behavior and make excuses for it is when I'm done with them. That's it. Then you don't have my sympathy anymore, right? That's sorry.
Great point, Sailor. And, you know, he has a certain magnetism to him. I get that. Whether I've seen him with Slipknot, I've seen him with Stone Sour. Stone Sour, not by choice. They were on the same bill as Megadeth, believe it or not.
What the fuck?
Believe it or not, yes. But
goes well together.
Yeah,
Can
well,
you
there were a lot of bands there, but
okay.
But I had to sit through them to get to, you know,
Can
Dave.
you imagine Dave Mustaine hanging out and there's no oh my god.
Hold on, that wasn't even the beginning of what was on that bill. I'll talk about that off the air, but he has a certain magnetism to him. I get it, but it's just that little bit of stink of Axl Rose on him that just completely turns me off from him. I love, outside of that first album, the impact it had, and those two songs that I do love those two songs. Other than that, I can take them or leave them, honestly.
So Matt's more of a centrist on this.
Yeah.
But you have some songs that you absolutely love from the band.
There are two
early on, right?
Yeah, because they invoke certain things in me that, you know, with the hockey comparison, I said, like, those are two.
Apparently, he wants to kill people when he listens.
Yeah. Those are two songs that get me jacked up when I need to get jacked up, either before a workout or before, you know, a hockey game or something like that.
I think for me, I would definitely say I'm not a fan of the band. I do absolutely respect what they managed to do and, you know, their contribution certainly to that time in music, their contribution to getting young kids excited about hard music, and then they went on to actually listen to good metal bands. Thanks for that, guys. That would be probably their most important contribution.
A Trojan horse compliment there.
Yeah.
Bada bing, guys. I'm here all night. That's about as many compliments as I can give them. I do, you know, I think they're great performers for sure. I don't have to care. I don't have to like the substance, but I can certainly say someone is they're better performers than they were and are musicians, in my opinion. They were great at keeping that, like you said, Christian, that the lore and the, still, I can't believe they're still fucking doing it to this day. That's mind blowing. I mean, how many years did Corey Taylor go without showing his face? I remember it being a fucking MTV news item.
Yeah. It was like a big thing until he decided to start Stone Sour.
Yeah, I remember it.
We all know that you're the guy from Slipknot.
Right. It was an MTV news segment, like about breaking news. Corey Taylor of Slipknot is revealed without his mask on, and I was just like, "What the fuck? Are we really fucking doing this right now?" And I looked at his face. I'm like, okay. But at the time, I happened to be sitting with my kids. I called them my young lads. They were they were still college age, and I happened to be sitting with two of them, and we were like folding t-shirts or something for an upcoming show, and they were flipping the fuck out that they got to see Corey Taylor's face, and they were just talking about it all night. I remember driving to the show and being like, "You guys, shut the fuck up! No one's allowed to say this fucker's name anymore." They were. I mean, it was all the rage for so long.
Like when kids took the makeup off. It's like the same thing.
Man, yes, very.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge deal back in the day.
Man, they should have kept the fucking makeup on. Those
especially now.
Hey, they put it back on.
They should have kept the makeup on and put fucking socks in their mouths and shut them the fuck up. That's a whole other. That's a whole other discussion. We should do like, what I would really love. Especially because like shit's so stressful right now. Before the year's over, we should have a shit on Kiss night.
Shit on Kiss.
We could come up with like 10. I'll write another poem like I wrote for Metallica on Valentine's Day.
Man.
10 ways why I
did a
hate
Gene
you.
Simmons episode. So you want to like expand it to like?
No, I want to do like a whole shit on Kiss night.
Kiss. All right.
Yes.
I'm with you.
I'll write some sonnets about how much I hate them. I know there's software out there where you can have like, oh god, someone told me this a long time ago. You can have like a famous person's voice like read stuff. It's like a soft. You know what I'm talking about, Ed?
So it's like a computer simulation of someone's voice that will just read whatever
stuff in there. Yes, maybe I can find one with Patrick Stewart.
I'm gonna have a lot of fun with Samuel L. Jackson stuff later.
Oh my god!
Yeah, or Morgan Freeman. James Earl Jones.
Oh, that would be really good.
There's a lot of choices here.
There is a lot of choices. Oh my god! Yeah, Morgan Freeman would be a good one. Why do I hate thee so? Why is thee such poubelle? Let's add that to the list, guys.
I just gotta say kudos to Chris for coming on here and being such a good sport. But while we crap all over one of his favorite bands,
hour and a half. It's all good. It's all love.
I was expecting you to put up a better fight, man. You're a wrestling fan.
Yikes! Well, I thought my tag team partner here would have had me, but
we're gonna have to get you. We're gonna have to get you back.
Leading towards back and forth.
Yeah, I'm teasing the heel turn, man.
No, but I mean, I clearly. But
maybe I should have to learn a little bit about wrestling, and then I can argue with you guys about wrestling.
So, who's the favorite wrestler, Chris? Because my wrestling experience, the last time I watched wrestling, it was like Hulk Hogan and Rowdy Piper. I mean,
that's the golden age, man. Fucking late 80s.
We're grandparents.
Yeah.
Mine was Glow, but the original Glow. I think I was like 11. So I think it was like 19. I don't know how old I was. 1987. I used to watch Glow, and I would get in trouble for it. I think that's the last time. I mean, everybody always knew. Everybody always knew Hulk Hogan, brother.
Everybody knows that guy.
And who toured with Cyndi Lauper? Remember even had their own show together.
Yeah, that was the guy with the
Lou Albano.
Man. He was in the video for
they went on
Lou.
tour.
Captain Lou, yeah.
Okay.
The rubber bands all over his face.
It was in her book. She talks about how what a weird fucking time in the world that the label was like, I have a great idea. Let's put this orange-haired lady who sings music we don't understand together with this wrestling guy, and they're going to tour together.
That was a big deal in the mid '80s to bring her in.
Smart. Yeah,
because she was in the corner of Wendy Richter, who was female wrestling was nowhere near what it was then as it is now. Not even close. But Wendy Richter, they were pushing as the female Hulk Hogan at the time, and to bring Cyndi Lauper in, who's this huge star. It drew a lot of eyes, who weren't wrestling fans.
Well,
so
it was smart.
It made it a big deal.
That was like
they did it before she was that big.
Yeah,
that was like a key moment for crossover and pop culture appeal with wrestling, I think, too. Because after that, I mean, a decade later, Mike Tyson is there with D-Generation X, and it was just like it was all about getting the big stars involved.
Yeah, I mean, we started seeing wrestlers, professional wrestlers in movies and on our favorite sitcoms, and then vice versa. Metal bands were opening up, and new wave, like whatever bands, rock bands were opening up for some of the metal shows or
like a big
wrestling on wrestling tours and things like that. I mean, I remember that. I remember begging. Oh my God, I begged. I think I was in the 7th grade, and I begged my mom to let me go to the monster truck rally because it was monster trucks. Sunday. Exactly, and it was
Sunday.
Whoever was the biggest wrestling stars at the time, and then it was a rock band. I can't remember who it was. Someone that I really liked and was really good, and it was all happening together. Right, I could have given two shits about the wrestling aspect because I probably would have been, I don't know, I shouldn't say that. I was really interested in the band, but I also was like, oh fuck yeah, monster trucks, there'll be lots of hot guys there. And she didn't let me go. It could have been a defining moment in my life.
Monster Jam.
Yeah, it's been the whole Cyndi Lauper thing was like a pretty historic moment, and now you look like in modern day. I mean, Matt knows NXT has All Out Life by Slipknot as their theme song, and then Code Orange opened up a wrestling show. Like they performed live to open up the show. So and they have their own shirt. I can't remember a time where a metal band had a WWE shirt. Like they have their own shirt that you can. I bought it, obviously,
like an official one. Wow.
Yeah, it's like it was for the event, and it's a Code Orange shirt, and it's like sold by WWE. So that's awesome.
Not to mention too, Motorhead played at WrestleMania. They played Triple H in. Triple H spoke at Lemmy's funeral. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was one of the guys that gave a eulogy at Lemmy's funeral. There's a relationship there that is very, very, very important and very deep when it comes to hard music and professional wrestling. Definitely.
For sure.
That'd be a cool show to do a crossover a discussion on the intersection of rock and wrestling.
Yeah, Joan Jett played in Ronda Rousey WrestleMania a couple years ago, so pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember WrestleMania being a rock thing. Like that's how we perceived it, right? As kids, it was very much like, and they looked like most of the guys had like long hair, like they kind of looked like rockers too. It was like, wrestling. There was a wrestling guy, but you could tell he was probably a rocker. Also was kind of the imagery at the time.
Hulk Hogan was supposed to be the bassist for Metallica.
Right.
So the story goes.
Right.
So the story goes.
According to him, which I mean,
but I remember that. That's a fantastic.
You imagine 6'8", 330 pounds on stage with the skinny Californian kids. Yeah.
Oh my God.
The bell tolled, brother.
Yeah.
You just took it from me, damn it.
Sorry for stealing your thunder.
I can't tell you how many years everything was brother. Like everything we did when mom used to scream at us, stop saying that. When we'd say, okay, mother.
There you go.
Oh my God. Well, this was super fun.
It was.
Christian, thanks so much for coming on and putting up with my potty mouth and shitting all over your favorite band.
One of my favorites.
One of your favorite bands.
They're really my favorite. I sent Matt a list of who do you guys more probable to cover, and he was like, "Yeah, probably Slipknot." Out of
it's the most old. Like they started earlier than any of the other bands, so this was. Yeah. I figure the
Makes
best
sense.
bet. Yeah.
But regardless, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me, and it was fun talking something outside of wrestling. And so music and whiskey are probably my two biggest loves outside of professional wrestling. So I wanted to take a break from my show and just doing the wrestling talk and talk music with a really great crew that really, like I said, I've been listening to some of your episodes and I really love what you guys do. I love the way you guys break it down and just the chemistry you guys have and just that feel that we also try to emanate on our shows. Just a couple of friends together, just shooting the shit. So
thanks.
Thank you for making the time out for me and fitting me in. And I mean, for better or for worse, it is this spooky season. So what better way to kick off October than a bunch of freaks in masks, right?
Hell yeah. I mean, that's a good point.
Touche. Yeah.
That's a good point. And you actually, you've been doing something very unique. You are trying to watch a different horror movie every day in October, correct?
That is correct. So I started on October 1st. I'm going to, obviously because of tonight, I couldn't. So I'm going to have to double up tomorrow, but I'm okay with that. And so I'm trying to, because I mean, cable networks have been doing these for, marathons for years and years. I was like, why don't I actually try and sit and watch a horror movie every year? And so I'm keeping a list of them. I might cover it on at the end of the month on our show. So we'll see. But it's been fun so far. And like I was saying before, I listened to your Halloween episode from last year and got a couple of ideas of what to watch. So I watched for the listeners that did. I watched Fire in the Sky because you guys were talking about it. So
fuck that movie.
I was interested. It is disturbing, yes.
Anything that's plausible is what fucks me up. Like, if it's something so not plausible, it's not going to scare me. Right. But when it's like that's like I don't like the disturbing.
When it could happen, it's like,
that's why. And I'm like,
me.
God forbid aliens really exist like that and are like, snatching us up at night and sticking things up our butt. Oh God, no, no, don't, no, thank you.
About that one though, and a lot of these alien abduction stories they've been able to discount for one reason or another. He's a different story. Like no one has been able to discount anything this guy has said. There have been witnesses corroborating what he said, and how they put it on film just stays with me to this day.
Yeah,
the lie detector test too.
Yeah. I mean, it's disturbing. Yes.
I think if you believe it enough yourself, if you are like, first of all, reality is our own construct, right? So, I mean, it's if you really believe something, and I think that is the case. I don't know why I'm going to mention cults again for the second time in one show, but I think that's the case for some cult leaders is they really, I think a lot of them are full of shit, but some of them really, really believe what's happening or what they think or what they're preaching. I think if you if you give someone that truly believes this has been their experience, you're going to pass a lie detector test. You're going to be able to corroborate things because as far as you're concerned, it actually happened,
It's your truth.
Exactly.
That's
so
right.
I think that's what comes across in his story is that it's so genuine because he definitely believes this. I do not think for 1 second that he's intending to bullshit anyone. And I mean, I'm not saying it fucking happened, but that's what makes it so compelling is that he really truly believes it. Let's just all hope it's not true. Because I don't want that to be true.
Well, 2020 has given us a few surprises already.
You shut your dirty mouth, young man.
Yeah, we still got Almost 3 months left.
Yeah, we're in the fourth quarter right
Hey,
now. So
everybody calm the fuck down. We don't say these things out loud. Don't you know that by now? My bingo card is not only full, but I've written on both sides of it. There's no more. There's no more room. We've got to be done with this shit. We need a break. On that note, I think it's time to wrap it up. We've been here for a while and it's been super fun. Love to have you back anytime, Christian. And I think it'd be super fun to get together and have your partner on too and talk about rock and wrestling. And yeah, again, please tell us where people can find your show and where they can find you as well on the internets.
So we are on Instagram at Through the Table and on Twitter at 3TPod. That's the number 3, the letter TPOD. You could find me on Twitter at The Rice Crispy. That's CHRISPY. I'm not really super active on my personal, but those are the podcast pages. So to stay up to date with what we're up to and the latest wrestling news, check out Through the Table.
Awesome. Thanks.
Very good.
awesome.
Matt, get us out of here.
All right. As always, thanks for sticking around. We hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as we did, and we always do. You can find us on Instagram at Metal Rock Whiskey and on Twitter as well. We have a pretty cool Twitter page. Go check it out. And we also have a super cool Facebook group under Spirit of Rock Podcast Network. You can follow us individually as well. You can find me at The Whiskey Obsessor. That is whiskey, save the E, Sailor.
You can find me all over the internet as Sailor Retro.
And they can find me on Instagram as Bourbon Geek. And hey, listeners, if you love us or even just like us, please, we ask that you hit that subscribe button and give us a review because it really does matter to us. And of course, tune in next week for another episode of Metal Rock and Whiskey.
And on that note, fuck you, Axl Rose.
Yeah.
Later, everyone.